A few months ago, I played Virtua Fighter 2 for the first time ever. I figured I'd give it a shot and try it out since I liked a lot of SEGA games ranging from Sonic to Crazy Taxi to Virtua. I occasionally heard people talk about Virtua Fighter and didn't really pay any attention to it. I always gravitated more towards the Capcom games and the SNK games since they were more cool and flashy. Then I downloaded VF2 on my PS3 and thought maybe it would change my mind about the franchise. When it came to picking my main, I chose Jackie Bryan since he looked the coolest and went in thinking that the game would be a breeze. And goddamn, I was wrong. At first, it seemed like a pretty easy game to get the hang of, but by the time I got to stage 3, things started to ramp up heavy. The AI almost feels reactionary, like it knows what attack to pick in order to beat mine out. It took forever to get past a certain point, and then I kinda just gave up. I never got to fight Dural, and it might be a while before I go back to do so. However, while I do think the AI is unnecessarily brutal, VF2 is still a fantastic game. Unlike most games that came out around the same time, Virtua Fighter was the first of its kind to use 3D models in this way and set the standard for what 3D fighting games should be. Then, the sequel came out a few years later and practically perfected everything that came before. I respect the game for what it was in the time that it came, and the graphics also do hold up quite well in the modern day. But while I did enjoy VF2, it felt like I could enjoy it more if I spent some time actually training and knowing what I was doing. The PS3 version I have doesn't have a training mode, but thankfully, my local shop had a copy of VF4 for $5 and I quickly bought it and tried it out. Reviews online said that this was one of the best in the series, but I reserved judgment until I sat down and played it. I thought maybe it wouldn't be as good as people said it was, or maybe Virtua Fighter just wasn't for me. All I have to say is, where the fuck has this been all my life? Let me start with the controls. Typically, fighting games have at least 4 attack buttons, 2 punch buttons and 2 kick buttons that act as light and heavy attacks. Some games even had a block button like Mortal Kombat. Virtua Fighter, however, only has 3 buttons, a punch, a kick, and a guard button. There's no light and heavy variations, rather there are low and high attacks. When you combine an attack button with a direction, you get a different attack with the character. It's almost like Smash Bros, but a bit more complicated. Special moves aren't done with your average quarter circle, half circle, or DP motion. Typically, you press the direction plus 2 buttons, all of which depending on the character you play. Jackie has a lightning kick, which is done by pressing down and punch and kick at the same time. He can also add more kicks to the attack the more times you press kick. You can also grab characters by pressing punch and guard and change the type of throw if you press the direction at the same time. When I played VF2, I thought the execution on the controls could have been a little bit better. On VF4, holy shit, this thing is perfection. The game feels smooth as hell and it's so satisfying to get combos down. The sound design also helps. VF2's sound design is iconic, but when you attack someone in VF4, you can feel the pain that the characters are going through. There's so much depth in this game, it's insane. If I had to describe this game in one sentence, I'd say its simplicity makes it complex. Like I mentioned earlier, other fighting games have mechanics or extra moves that add to the experience and also look cool and flashy. Say for example, EX moves. They're just a souped up version of a character's special move that look really cool when they're pulled off right. Virtua Fighter doesn't have that, any of it. There are no projectiles, no EX moves, and no super moves. It's the closest one could get to a realistic fighting game. It seems limiting, but trust me, it isn't. There is a fuck ton of moves for each character in the game, as well as a metric butt ton of throws. It makes it really hard to guess what the opponent is going to do next. All the characters are from different parts of our actual world representing different actual martial arts. Akira, the main character, practices Kung Fu, Jackie practices Jeet Kune Do, yes, the martial art created by Bruce Lee, and Jin Kujo practices karate. It may sound boring when I describe it, but when you actually play the game enough, you understand what makes this series so special. It doesn't need any sort of gimmick to be good. Hell, the throws in this game are entertaining enough. If you're looking for a game that's deep but not too over-designed, Virtua Fighter is a very good pick. After I enjoyed Virtua Fighter 4, I went back to that same store and got a copy of VF5. No Final Showdown though. I got access to El Blaze and Eileen, but no Jin Kujo, which is kind of disappointing given how after Evo Japan, I kinda wanted to try this character out myself. Right now though, I've stuck myself with learning how to play Jackie given how he looks cool and again, he practices a martial art by the most badass man to have ever lived. For someone like me who barely played any Virtua Fighter, I'd say he's a good beginner character. I'd also tried a bit of Akira later on, and while I do think he has some pretty good moves and combo potential, Jackie's personality kept me around. I think this franchise has potential for a comeback, and it feels like SEGA may think the same as well. A few years ago, SEGA re-released Virtua Fighter 5 on PS4, this time titled Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown. It was announced as a free-to-play game for those who had PlayStation Plus. I convinced a friend of mine who had a PS4 to get the game, and we had a total blast when it came out. It was the only time I'd ever played Virtua Fighter before I decided to sit down and play VF2. Then last year, SEGA announced that they would be bringing back a lot of its classic IPs like Streets of Rage, Crazy Taxi, and Jet Set Radio. Considering that 10 million people downloaded the redesigned VF5, I think it's very likely that VF would come back. I mean, even Katsuhiro Harada, the face of Tekken, is practically goading SEGA into making a new one. Also, you should follow his Twitter, you won't regret it. I've become very invested in learning about the Virtua Fighter series. I still want to mess around a bit with VF5 as well as get some online matches with VF4 on Fightcade. I'm thinking about picking up Brad Burns and learning about his playstyle. I hope this series comes back in some form, and I'd love it even more if it came out on PC. With that being said, I'm Jay Samra, goodbye, sayonara, alvida, peace.